So it's one of those nights where it's like super late and I'm kind of like telling myself like, well, I'm not tired. But it's really more like I'm just irresponsibly laid up later than I should be. And I'm just telling myself that I'm not tired when I'm really just, um, I don't know, doing a thing. So much to be distracted by. But I randomly went on this YouTube rabbit hole and I came across the movie The Usual Suspects, which was one of my favorite movies. I had a copy of it, and like I remember like having my first apartment and like trying to force people to like come over and watch it if they hadn't seen it. I'd be like, "Have you seen this movie?" And they'd be like, "No," and I'd be like, well, "Let's watch it right now," um, because there's this reveal that happens at the end, and I think part of it is that like it was ruined for me because by the time that I had heard about it, like it was like considered a classic movie, and so people they were just everyone was comfortable giving the ending away, and so I was just like, yeah, I should watch that movie one day. So it was sort of ruined for me, and so I sort of lived vicariously through everyone else that got to watch it, and um, so I was like, I'm gonna look up this movie, like see if there's any reactions, and there was like I just got through like five, and that was really fun to see that because it was like younger people who wouldn't even know that the movie about the movie or anything. So um, yeah, so that was fun. I was watching those, but I remembered also like I was like obsessed with the comparisons of because I was like Kaiser Soze is like a Jesus character to me, even though in the story he's more compared to the devil. And I understand why, because he's like a violent person. And, this guy goes in and spins this whole tale about a whatever. And, it's all a big lie. And then you never see him again. And he escapes um, jail or whatever. Or, um, and so like I get the comparison obviously, but to me it was like I would watch that movie and I'd be like, no, this is like Jesus all the way. Like, what are you talking about? Um, and it's way more um, impressive, like what Jesus did because he basically did a Kaiser Soze, but he like told the truth. Like he did it by telling the truth and just um, the way that he was able to throw people off was just by being a human and just being humble and just like really being himself. I mean, which was, a main aspect of this character. Um, but it wasn't an act, but in a way it is. It's like the way that Jesus, like, I've heard so many accounts. I won't say so many, but I've heard a handful of accounts where Jesus is able to sort of disguise himself in some way, and people don't even know it's him when they are talking to, whether they're in heaven and they think they're talking to an angel, or they're on the earth and they just, or in a dream and they think they're just talking to some random guy and it's him. And, sometimes it's like he literally doesn't even look like himself, but sometimes it's just, he's just able to do that. And so, and then sometimes it's like he's so, it's like I imagine, and I feel like they do explain it, that his nature is just so humble that it's just like you just think he's some random guy. Like, you don't expect it to be the Lord of Lords. It's like any person with any importance has got some type of air about them, some type, or they've got an entourage or something, you know what I mean? And so he can just, even the way that he can obviously appear any type of way and morph and whatever. And I've had people describe him as like, not very tall, like 5'10" or something. And they're taller than him or as tall as him. And then obviously sometimes he's like 12 feet in the air. You know what I'm saying? Like, depending on whatever is trying to be conveyed in that moment. And so it's just really interesting. And so, um, yeah, him coming to earth as a man and literally, like, he just said, "My Father in heaven, this and that, and I do what I see my Father do." And, yeah, he spoke in parables, but for the most part, he just told the truth. And everybody was just like, yeah, anyway, so what else could this possibly be? Like, and that's how he was able to hide, is just by telling people about unseen things and talking about what was to come and talking to future audiences. And the best, like, Jesus at his most like Kaiser Soze is, I remember like being 18 years old and reading this story for the first time, and I was like, how why is no one, like, it's not in a single movie, it's not portrayed in a single, I've never seen it. I'm like, if I ever make a Jesus movie, like, this is going to be the first scene. Like, you guys are like losing your mind right now. Like, it would be like this like non-chronological, like, it would be so deep and good. But there's literally a story where after he rose from the dead, or after he died on the cross, right? And I mean, that was a whole debacle, him dying on the cross. It got stormy. There was an earthquake. It got really dark, so everybody remembers that day. And everybody was kind of like, "Ooh." Like, um, and to the point where there were people who were resurrected. There were saints that um, got out of their graves and walked around, and people saw them. Like, we don't talk enough about that, okay? And that's not portrayed either, which I understand they're trying to get across the whole sacrifice thing. But um, so yeah, he dies on the cross. 3 days later, you know, the body is gone. The disciples are, you know, feeling better, and there's God talks to them and all that stuff. But meanwhile, there's these guys that are not part of the inner circle. They're just, in Jerusalem or wherever it happened. I don't even know the location. I think it's Jerusalem. I forget where he was crucified at. But anyway, they are talking about everything that's been happening. And it's literally, the story's called The Road to Emmaus. And they're talking about everything that's been happening. And they're like, just kind of like, what does it mean? And, the scripture, obviously they're Jewish, so they're super into like the prophets and like where this all fit in, and was Jesus Messiah, was he not? And then this guy comes and talks to him, and then he's like, "Hey, what are you guys talking about?" And what I love about the story, like, among other things, like, is like, I mean, it's perfect for a movie, because this guy's like, "What are you guys talking about?" And they look at him like, "What are we talking about? Have you been asleep for the last like week?" Like, they're just like, "Bro, we're talking about the stuff and, whatever, and Jesus being crucified, and like, what?" And so the guy is like, well, haven't you read the scriptures? And he like takes him through the scriptures and like all of this stuff. And then they're like walking down the road. They're getting ready to go. Like the road splits. They're going to go to their house, and the guy like goes the other way on the other road. Like, and they're like, why don't you come and stay with us or whatever? So he agrees to come with them, and so they all like go to their house and they sit and have dinner or whatever. And the guy like breaks bread and like does a prayer to God. And then it says something like their eyes were opened and they realized who had been talking with them. And then Jesus disappears. And they say something like, were our hearts not burning within us as he was speaking? Like they were like, we should have known, like that was him. Like, I cannot believe that this story has just stayed in the Bible, like for only, and like I don't even really hear that much preached on it. Like it is the most Hollywood thing I've ever heard. I don't know why it hasn't made itself into a movie. Like I just like that was one of the first stories I read when I was like reading through the Gospels for the first time, and I was just like, this is so badass, dude. Like what? Like I just thought that was amazing. It's still amazing. It's still like that needs to be filmed tomorrow. Like so anyway, it just reminded me of that, and yeah, it would be cool to see that make it to the big screen because I mean, and it's got to be the first scene, and then you go back and you jump around in chronological order, obviously. But yeah, I should go to bed, so that's what I'm gonna do probably.